What is up, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to FudgeMuppet. Today, we have an interesting video for you. One that has been asked for numerous times, over and over and over and over, ever since we did a few of them at the start of Skyrim Special Edition's release. Around there, this is an Is It Worth It video. Today, we're talking about Alteration. You guys asked for it, so we're supplicating, giving in, and we're gonna do it. So, I'm gonna go through all of the perks for Alteration and just basically talk about whether they're worth it or not. And this is, of course, if you're being, penny pinching with your perk points. So, there's some obvious ones like Novice Alteration through to Master Alteration, which, are pretty self-explanatory, and you probably want to get them, and especially because some of the other perks along the way. You need Expert to get to things like Atronach and stuff like that, which are better perks. But let me just talk about Master for a second, because a lot of the time, with a lot of the magic skills, Master spells are kind of not that fantastic, but there's only one exception to this. Mass Paralysis is cool, but I find you're better off just using Paralyze. I just don't like how slow you are and how long it takes to just deliver one Paralysis, and it doesn't even last as long as a dual-casted normal Paralyze. But Dragonhide can actually be very, very useful. The 80% damage reduction is really nice, but what I'd say is it's really not worth it in that regard. Like you're better off just sticking to Ebony Flesh and getting the Expert, just up to Expert. Yeah, it just takes, but you got to enter battle, and it takes you got to do your little summoning ritual thing, and bang, and then you finally got 80%, but you can get interrupted, or I guess you could just prepare before you go in. But look, it's just not my flavor. I wouldn't necessarily recommend it. What I'd rather say, you do just use Ebony Flesh, but the biggest benefit to this whole tree is actually not the spells itself, because a lot of the Alteration spells are just shield spells. You get Paralyzed, which is useful, and there's some little niche-y ones like Telekinesis, Water Breathing, and things like Equilibrium, but the most useful ones are hands down the Flesh spells and Paralyze. I would say get to Expert because you get Paralyze and Ebony Flesh. But the biggest benefit from the Alteration skill tree is actually the perks and the passive benefits that you get from them. Magic Resistance, that gives you up to, when you invest 3 perk points, you get 30% magic resistance. And if you combine that with the Lordstone, that's like 55%. And then you can go and get the Agent of Mara, which I think is another 15%. So you can get a pretty solid boost to your magic resistance. But one of the best things there is the Atronach perk, which gives you 30% spell absorption. If you get this on top of the Atronach stone itself, and you all know how much we love the Atronach stone, that gives you 80% spell absorption. That means every time a spell hits you, there's 80% chance that you will just absorb it, get that back as Magicka, and take 0 damage. To make yourself a magic tank, I think Alteration is just a must, and combine it with the Atronach stone. Now, there's also the perk Mage Armor, which basically increases how strong flesh spells are as long as you are only wearing clothes and no armor or anything. Of course, if you like to play the magey kind of character, of course you want to use your Ebony Flesh and so on, but technically you're better off just using, light armor or something and smithing that way up and just ignoring the whole shindig with Ebony Flesh, and you could just use Paralyze instead. But then again, you could argue it's like, oh, well, why put all this investment into Alteration if you're not going to use it? But then again, it's the Atronach and the Magic Resistance perks that really help you out. There's Stability also there, which increases your Alteration spell duration by 50%. That can be cool for things like Paralyze and so on. Personally, I find if I'm playing and I just cast Ebony Flesh, usually that lasts long enough that I don't need that extra 50%. So it sort of ends up being a waste. I mean, you can do it for a bit of extra security, and also for the Paralyze is a different story. By knocking a guy out of battle, so you can handle the other guys and fight them off first and then come to him. But I just don't think it's that necessary, but it's decent, and I like to use it for role-playing and stuff. And same as the sort of dual casting thing, like you can dual cast and plus stability and have like a super long paralysis, but you don't need it. But I mean, it's not always about what you need. It's sometimes just fun to paralyze a guy for however long it is, like a minute or whatever. The Ebony Flesh example, I don't really think you need it, because really, if you're an Alteration master and you've got a lot of Alteration stuff, it really shouldn't cost a lot of Magicka to just reapply Ebony Flesh either. So if you ever are in a situation where it's like you use your Ebony Flesh and then you've only got 1 or 2 enemies left and your Ebony Flesh runs out, you can always just cast it again. Usually I find you'll just smash them all before you actually even run out. But yeah, so stability isn't my number one choice. So the main perks of benefit from the Alteration skill tree are basically Atronach, magic resistance too, but it does cost 3 perk points, and you can combine it with Breton and the Agent of Mara ability and the Lordstone to cap out your magic resistance without having to get any enchantments or something, which is cool, and especially if you don't want to go for the Atronach stone or something like that. But it's more investment for less of a benefit. The best perk in this whole tree, in my opinion, is the Atronach stone. That gives you 30% spell absorption, which you do have to get up to expert alteration to access. Stability's okay as well, and Mage Armor is definitely necessary if you're going to be playing a robes only mage with alteration. I would definitely recommend it in that case. But technically, if you're going for some sort of min-maxing sort of attitude, you're better off just going with armor. You'll get a lot more benefit from that. But yeah, that's basically all I have to say on alteration. We'll do some more videos, some more worth it videos. If you guys like this and you want more of these, we just had a lot of people asking about them, so I thought I'd just share my opinions on all the different perks and the sort of skill in general. Anyways, I'm Scott from FudgeMuppet, and I'll see you next time.